Hello, you guys. It's me, Melissa, and we're back inside of the Ranting shop to do our review for Ready to Love Season 4, Season 3, Season 4, you guys. Episode 8, where we get to see the exes of the men interact with the men's choices. So, of course, this episode is the men's turn to eliminate a woman. So the tables have turned indeed. The overall theme for this episode is that a lot of people have an idea of who these men are. And so they have a picture of who their exes could potentially be. And I feel like it's kind of wrong to judge someone's ex based on how you perceive them. Because as someone said, people change. Who you were at 20-something years old is not who you're going to be at 40-something years old. So for people to judge the ex and say, oh, that wasn't what I was expecting, or he doesn't have a type, or it's like you're judging someone based on a past that they might no longer be connected to. And I feel like it just doesn't make sense for you to do that. It almost seemed like people were trying to figure out if these men had types. And clearly, a lot of them didn't. So I feel like I didn't get the point of why people were doing that. But anyways, we're going to get into the episode for today. First, we have Cornelius. His ex's name is Tanika. Tanika looks like she's a very pretty woman, very much average looking, I should say, like very normal, like a woman you would meet at church or anywhere on the street. She seems very nice. She seems to match Cornelius's energy. Very laid back, very quiet, very thoughtful, so to speak. And people were trying to judge his ex on who he chose on the show, and people forget to and they don't seem to really think of things in its entirety. One thing we don't know for sure is when they became boyfriend and girlfriend. We don't know if that was when Cornelius was in his teens. We don't know if it was in his 20s. We don't know if it was in church. We don't know if it was in high school. We just don't know the nature of how he got with his ex. So as a result of that, I'm not understanding how people are like, oh, on the show he had Camille, but look at his ex. He doesn't have a type. That's not what that means. As I said before, people change. And of course, we're dealing with a show that has a selected amount of women. He doesn't have a lot to choose from, one. And two, what he may have chosen on the show is not what he'd necessarily go with off the show. So if anything, you have to judge his choice on the show as opposed to judging his ex. Because his ex is probably what he's more likely to go with, rather than what he or who he got with on the show. Given his limited amount of choices, and the fact that Camille kind of stake claim on him, kind of, have him, he's stuck with us, so to speak. So Tanika asked about celibacy, and as I said last week, she said she wanted to test drive the equipment. Now I asked Camille about this, and she said that a lot of things were edited out, and there was a broader context with which she spoke about the situation about celibacy. She says, long story short, I was telling a story that they took pieces of. I've always said I would respect his decision. That never changed. And she basically is saying that the production and the TV show is going to cut and edit things to give a particular narrative that may not be true. Taking all of that into consideration, it does seem like, or it does appear that what we're getting from the show is that Camille is not being fully 100% honest with Cornelius. So she said that she wants to, like, if her and Cornelius agree to celibacy, then she would trust and respect his decision and go along with whatever he wants. She says that she has a kid, and the ex was surprised. Like, if you're talking about celibacy, why do you have kids? Well, it could be that Camille as we know, when she met with her friends, it seems like this is something new that she's trying. It's not something she's always done, but it's something that she's trying now. So that answers that question. So she has a child and she's been engaged to multiple times. And of course, any person would look at this sideways and, question her ability or to be committed to somebody and her ability to be stable with somebody. So she says she dates with intention. She wasn't ready previously. She was too young. On the way out, Camille asked Cornelius when the ex was leaving, and then it's like we're getting another dose of the real Camille, because it did appear that when she was interacting with the ex, we were getting a lot of pageant answers, perfect answers, but they were not really answering the question. I mean, it wasn't an explicit response. And of course, we have to consider editing and all these things. Perhaps they did speak more in depth, but of course, that wouldn't be, I guess, too entertaining to watch, so they cut it out. So she is asking Cornelius when is their friend leaving, and we're seeing this possessive side again from Camille, which we do not like. The friend says she has good answers, and it's for him to determine if they're true or not, which is correct. She wouldn't rush into anything if she were him, because through engagements is not something you just bypass. Of course not. So there was that. Then we have Phil and his ex, and I forgot the name of his ex. They meet Shiloh and Tissia. Now, Tissia did not like where she was seated. She wasn't a fan of the seating arrangements. She felt as if a better placement would be Phil was in the middle and Shiloh and herself were on either side of Phil, and the friend was on the other side of the table, and that's not how they were seated. From my recollection, I believe Shiloh and Tissia was seated, I believe, on the same side of the table, and Phil and his ex were seated on the other side of the table. And she felt like she was like a third wheel to Shiloh and Phil's date. She felt like she was being cut off by Shiloh a lot. And of course, she said she didn't appreciate that. Shiloh talks about liking physical touch. And it's crazy how we get the positive question from Shiloh, but then we get the negative question answered by Tissia. And Tissia is saying a bad quality about herself is that she's too calculated, and the friend wasn't too satisfied, or the ex wasn't too satisfied with that answer. She felt like there must be something more about you that is a red flag. So I mentioned, of course, Tissia would not be the most confident when Shiloh is right there, measuring her words and what she says and trying to one-up her. People definitely got very competitive vibes from that date, as if the women were competing to be friends with his ex. And I would probably be like Tissia, very uncomfortable, not really wanting to compete, not wanting to even try competing for a man, you know what I mean? So Phil's ex mentioned he has a problem with communication, and of course he didn't want the ex to spill that tea, but that speaks volumes considering he seems to be communicating very, very well on this show. Tissia has an intensity, he says, that's not for everybody. And Shiloh is his strongest connection. Now you hear the difference between how he talks about each woman. He says Tissia has an intensity that's not for everybody, and Shiloh is his strongest connection. So it's very clear that he's not too interested in Tissia. That's obvious. We always knew this. But now we're getting more and more of him admitting it to us. Frank and ex Leah meet Sydney and Moomin. Leah is a white woman, and I believe somebody said this is the first time that somebody has brought a white woman on this show, because of course this show is catered to a black audience. So they were a little bit surprised, but then also not surprised that Frank has a white ex. Sydney was ready with questions, and I see people in the comment section talking about, I'm confused. I thought Sydney didn't know the ex was coming. Why does she have all these questions? Well, a simple way to analyze that situation is that, yes, the producers probably told her that someone would be on the date with Frank. She just didn't know it would have been Frank's ex. I mean, she knew that she had certain questions she wanted to ask about him, and regardless of who showed up, she was gonna ask. That doesn't mean she knew that the ex was coming. Now, she is being grilled left and right. The question that was asked about Frank, it was, what prompted you to move your focus from Frank? And that, I believe, was Leah. And Leah said, she wanted attention and he wasn't able to give that to her. So I said, Mr. I care too much last week. So you care too much, you smother the women, you're all up on the women. But that's contrary to what Leah says. Leah says you didn't give her attention. So that just makes me feel like Frank was lying a bit about the type of person he really is. And Courtney has confirmed that who Frank is on the show is not who Frank really is in real life. And people keep calling him like a president or a senator, because he knows how to use his words and come across very democratic. But I feel like we know that that is not truly who Frank is. So Moomin wants kids. Of course, Sydney wants marriage first. She has no real timeline on when she wants marriage, because she feels like she doesn't want to pressure the man into a marriage. However, Moomin has a timeline and she's thinking between a year or two. Do I think that's gonna happen? No, not with Frank. So Sydney said her favorite thing about Frank is that they balance off each other and she's the female version of him, which I believe is a good thing, because if you guys are able to connect so much so because you kind of feel like you know him because he's like you and you are like him, that is a one-up, in my opinion. Moomin says his heart and compassion for others is what she likes about him. Now, I have to say this about Moomin again. I'm very confused, because why mess with Frank when your values don't align? And people bring up the equally yoked conversation, and that basically means you and the individual you are interested in need to have the same core values for your life, and beliefs. If that doesn't align, then nothing can come from that. Nothing of substance can come from a situation where you guys are not fundamentally aligned. So I don't know why she's wasting her time with Frank. To be honest with you, to me it seems like she's just doing what the show asked her to do. But I don't think that, I really want to give Moomin the benefit of the doubt and say that she knows that her person is not there, but she's staying for the show. Because if I have to believe that she's this naive, I'm not gonna like her that much, simply because I'm not gonna have the patience, for somebody her age to be that naive. Like, I'm not gonna have the patience for it, And so I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt and say she's just there for the show. But based on her answers about, she knows her connection with Frank and so on, it seems like she genuinely might really like Frank and might really see something with him, which baffles me, because it almost seems as if who they present on the show is not really who they are, and it's not really what they want. Because I remember last season Liz talking about she wanted a spiritual leader and this and that as a husband, but then in other interviews she's saying, well, she didn't want this man that went to church every day and this and this and that. So it's like there's pieces of the puzzle that we as viewers don't get to really see, and that is why a lot of us are confused as to the guy that they end up picking, you know. So Frank says they both are different, but he has to make a they meaning both of the women are different, but he has to make the best decision for him. The best decision for Frank, based on who he says he is not more men. That's very clear. That is absolutely clear. Like, for goodness sake, Mooman is a children's ministry person. She's into church, she's into children's ministry, she sings, she does all that. Frank is in the nightlife. I don't see how that meshes, you know. So Walter's ex, Denise, meets Sabrina. And as I said before, a lot of people judge Walter based on how he looks and think that the type of ex he would have would be someone similar to Sabrina. So everybody was surprised when this dark-skinned woman with long, very shockingly, I think it was a bright green or bright yellow shade of nail polish, was across the table from him. And as I said, she doesn't represent the picture that we have of Walter's ex, because we think he's so clean cut and we think he's so, but then again, do you really know these people? We have to understand that this is a show, and every show, every episode, every season, they have a character for these people to play. So essentially they're not really fully themselves. They are their character. Like, for example, the last season, I remember it was, I forgot his name, the guy that was interested in Kyra, the tall guy with the beard. He was saying that they even policed what he wore. You know, he was more into the casual look, the jeans, the shirt, t-shirt and stuff. But the stylist for the show told him not to wear that, and to wear something that was more stylish, which was not him. So all that was to present an image of him that he wasn't necessarily, he wasn't, you know. And of course we have Liz, who was basically saying that she's not as spiritual as they made her seem on the show, and they made her seem as if she wants this godly guy, and really she did not necessarily want him to be this guy, this church guy that they were making us feel like she wanted. So they've curated characters for these people, and I suppose for Walter, they've made him into this nice, respectful, kind, suave, sweet, clean-cut type of guy. And because of that image that they've created for him, emphasis on created for him, we cannot seem to see beyond that, which I guess it makes sense, because what we see is what we see, and that's what we take at face value. Now, Walter, she says Sabrina is Walter's physical type. And that is very different from who she is and what she looks like. Walter, like, people were saying that perhaps that was not Walter's ex. Maybe that was his good friend in college or something. I don't know if that's true. Or maybe they dated in high school or whatever. And then she went off to she did something way different with her life, and he did something different with his life. That might be true. Who knows? Sabrina says, well, the ex asked Sabrina if she's crazy, and she says she's too classy and fabulous to be crazy. movement comes through and Sabrina leaves. She has something to do. She feels like she doesn't have to answer to Walter's ex. Any question she has about Walter, she feels like she can ask directly to Walter. Now, one thing I must say, and I'm seeing about Sabrina, is that her attitude is coming across very bougie and bitchy. That's the thing you get from Sabrina. It's like this air of arrogance from her, where she feels like, who are you to do? I think her friends are a very good reflection of who she is, you know. Now, Mumen comes in as soon as Sabrina leaves or wants to leave. Mumen wants 3 kids. Mumen is waiting for marriage to have sex. Walter says and admits that he is a sexual person. She says that she gives off enough sensual energy that Walter knows that when it does come to sex, he knows, that she can handle what she needs to handle in the bedroom. The ex is more on the side of Mumen than Sabrina, because the ex feels like that waiting for marriage thing that Mumen is saying is a lie. It's cap, like it's just a front. However, I disagree, because I really feel like that is Mumen's, that's how she feels. You know, it doesn't quite translate into the guys that she feels attracted to. But I feel like that is how she really feels. That is what she really wants. But sometimes somebody says they want something, but based on their choices and their actions, it just is opposite to what they say. So I completely understand where the ex is coming from. The ex thinks Sabrina is crazy and might want to control him. And I do see a little bit of control from Sabrina, but I don't know. We're gonna have to see where that comes from. A lot of people were saying the ex saw right through Sabrina and felt like Sabrina is not who she presents herself as, and she is more unhinged than she would like to admit. And people were saying the ex was spot on and Sabrina was being nice, nasty, and she was being a little rude and a little arrogant, and they didn't like that about Sabrina. I noticed that people are starting to dislike Sabrina a lot, especially coming from the last episode where they feel like she set up Sean. Now, about that situation, about that whole friend meetup with Sabrina and Sean gave some clarity to that date. He feels like it wasn't all Sabrina. He did not feel like Sabrina was the sole reason why he got the brutal end of the stick. He feels like production had a lot to do with how the friends responded and reacted to him. He mentioned some things, for example, that the production spoke to Sabrina, the production spoke to their friends, and their attitude towards him changed. They were very stone-faced, they didn't smile, they didn't laugh. They asked him very tough questions, and literally, this timeline is crazy. He mentioned the last and only date he went with Sabrina was 15 hours after, or 15 hours before he had to meet the friends. So this man didn't really have any time to really get to know Sabrina. He didn't have a lot of time to really gauge the relationship with her or anything of that sort. And he kind of put some rumors to rest, which is that he's broke. He stated he's not broke. And when they were talking about the 1 or 2 bills, it was about the fact that whilst dating, what would he pay for? And he said he'd pay for maybe the Netflix or the nail salon trips and stuff like that. But the girls still were not impressed. They were like, really, are you serious? But he wasn't speaking in the context of a relationship. He was speaking in the context of a dating situation. I don't know if that might change anybody else's mind about whether they think Sean is a broke individual or not, but there you go. One thing I do think about Sean is that he never fully answers a question. And for me, I don't see him as a genuine individual. Because a genuine person doesn't have to give you a backstory and tell you A, B, C, and D before they tell you how they truly feel. They just tell you how they feel. And so with that, I feel like he is very calculated in how he says things or how he attempts to come across. And I still think he should have been sent home, period. Now, Dante is having his ex meet with Shiloh. Now, this ex seems to be a recent ex. It doesn't seem to be one of his baby's moms. And people were like, if it's not one of your baby moms, then what are you really doing? You know, that's where the real tea comes from. Not these women that you've had 6 month relationships with. And of course, he would never bring one of his baby's mothers because he does not want a negative light shown upon him, obviously. So he had his ex meet Shiloh first. He had his ex meet Shiloh, Zadia Mumen. Zadia is first. I said bouncing in with what looked like a very fake smile. And I'm coming to realize that Zadia's fake smiles a lot. Her smile is not genuine. Her smile just seems to be something she puts on just because she has a nice smile and I don't know. But it just doesn't seem genuine and didn't seem genuine on these dates. Then Shiloh comes through. Of course, Zadia doesn't know Shiloh is coming. She's flustered. She takes a shot. The ex thinks Dante has become more responsible as the time has gone by. She says she'll date him now because he's been working on himself. If he's given you physical, well, she was telling the women basically how would they know if Dante was interested in them, and she said if he's giving you physical affection, he likes you. The women leave and Dante asked X, who out of the two looks more compatible? She mentions Shiloh because she wasn't looking for dirt, whereas Zadia was. I think Zadia just didn't seem that interested when competition showed up. I also feel like she, of course, was a bit defensive and in a mode where she wasn't interested in competing, you know, for his ex. So she kind of, I think, gracefully kind of sabotaged the situation because she didn't really care for the competition. Whereas if you notice, Shiloh is always up for some competition, you know. Whereas in Shiloh's situation with Tissia and Zadia, they're not as interested in doing the tit for tat and trying to outdo the other one, you know. So Zadia to me just did not seem interested. She didn't seem like she wanted to be there. She didn't, from the time she saw the ex, she was like not very pleased. And when she saw Shiloh, it made it even worse. Now, Naeem and ex Victoria. So Naeem's ex was talking about, oh, he likes women with big butts. You know, and that to me was not something anybody was expecting because Naeem is supposed to be this good, ethnic, conscious, you know, natural type of person. Come to find out, he also likes big butts. They talk about love languages. She mentioned it, Zadia mentioned it bounces between physical touch and gifts. And the ex is like, well, he doesn't really like physical touch. Naeem is trying to shut the ex up. The ex is like, oh, well, maybe you didn't like physical touch with me, you know. And that sparked a lot of people's antennas, because they're like, this ex seems to be someone that still has something for Naeem, or perhaps they didn't end on very good terms, and people even threw in maybe he cheated, and so I don't know why they ended. They never spoke on why the relationship ended. That would have been a good question for the people to ask. To me, nobody asked why their ex and themselves did not continue on with their relationship, which to me is weird, because that's a very obvious question. Like, why didn't you guys work? What was the problem? So he's never been in a serious relationship, and of course that's a very big red flag. The ex said, well, it's because he's very particular, and he's very guarded, and she never thought she'd be in a situation where she's meeting a potential ex of his. I mean, she's never thought she'd be in a situation where she's meeting a potential interest of Naeem. Now, Zadia seems emotionally unavailable, and that's why the ex picked up on it, and she's like, I'm not sure if Zadia will be able to really be there for Naeem emotionally. I also don't think so either, because Zadia to me just seems like a smiling wall, a smiling brick wall. I've never seen any emotion from Zadia so far other than aggression. Like, she's either smiling or aggressive, and that's all I've seen from her. Aggression in the way she responds to people, aggression in the way, I suppose, she interprets what people mean, just very negative and aggressive. And so that just paints a picture of Zadia that we don't like. And we tend to say things like, well, I understand now why she's single, because I don't think any man would want to deal with such an aggressive personality. And as you mentioned with Zadia, or she works out, or she is this and that. All other things he mentioned were physical things, so maybe there's a physical attraction there with Zadia. Anyways, the date that we didn't expect to see, Sydney and Phil, she was intrigued that Phil wasn't rushing to meet her, because she thinks she's the shit, and so she's expecting guys to line up to get to know her. And we saw Phil's reaction when Sydney came through. He was very interested in her. He was very, happy with what he saw. But he never went up to her. He never struck a conversation with her. And remember what Phil said. He was basically saying that he wasn't up for competing for Sydney's attention, and that's essentially why he didn't rush to go meet her or to go speak with her when she first came. So she's seeing it as, oh, he's playing hard to get, and of course that's making her more interested in him, because she's accustomed to guys running up to her, talking to her, and bombarding her with whatever. So she likes him. She felt butterflies with him. And I mentioned that butterflies is a fight or flight response. It is not a romantic thing like movies and rom-coms have led us to believe. It is a sign that your body is telling you that perhaps this is a dangerous situation and you should run from it as opposed to run to it. But what we tend to do is run to the butterflies and end up in mess. And I remember last season we had Alexis. She felt butterflies with that guy that I keep forgetting, Kyra's love interest, and that should have been a warning sign for her to not get herself entangled with him, but she did anyways and ended up getting embarrassed on the reunion. So with Sydney, I definitely feel like she should leave Mr. Phil alone, because her body is telling her that is not the place that she needs to be. However, as we normally do, she runs to the butterflies. So she talked about she lived in Japan for some time, which makes me feel like perhaps Sydney is multiracial. Perhaps she's black, Japanese, and black. That explains the shape of her eyes. Anyways, he had some good banter. Phil has lots of god kids, and he wants, of course, his own kids. And it's very clear during this meetup that Sydney really likes Phil. Now, what viewers tend to do is they tend to see one person's reaction and feel like they both feel the same way about each other. We only saw Sydney head over heels over Phil. We never saw Phil reciprocate that energy. So I keep telling people, yes, they could potentially turn into something, but they're not going to, because Phil just seems very content with where he is with Shiloh. I just don't see him as interested in Sydney as he is with Shiloh. It's just a different vibe, a different energy. He's more comfortable with Shiloh. He's more affectionate with Shiloh. He's a different person around Shiloh. Alright, so the men convene. Aisha was not there during this particular episode, and on her Instagram she told us why, and let me see if I screenshot it so that I could read her reasons for not being there for this particular episode. Oh, she says, I know y'all missed me tonight, but I wasn't available and my connections is strong. Didn't need no validation, period. So she wasn't there because of unforeseen circumstances. But she's very confident in the connections that she has. So there's that. Because a lot of people were like, oh, Aisha wasn't there. Why wasn't she eliminated? Sydney wasn't there at some point. I didn't hear anybody ask why Sydney wasn't eliminated. So it's just very weird to me. Sometimes people are not able to fulfill their obligations. That doesn't necessarily mean that they should be on the chopping block. If their connections are stable, why would they be on the chopping block? So the men convene. Aisha wasn't there. Frank is pressed on Sydney. He says there are genuine feelings from men. Walter recaps his date. X thinks Sabrina is crazy. He says he's taking a closer look at Moment just based on the insight that the ex gave him about Sabrina. He's kind of second guessing Sabrina now. Maybe Sabrina is not who he thought she was. Naeem, Zaria, Frank thinks Naeem is not seeing the full picture about... Naeem, Zaria. Frank thinks Naeem is not seeing the full picture about Zaria, and Naeem only cares about how she treats him, and he's not looking at the full picture of how Zaria treats other people. Because that's where the truth lies. The truth doesn't lie in how you treat the one you like. It's how you treat people you don't really like. Do you treat them with care and respect, or are you rude and disrespectful? Exes like both of Phil's exes. Dante speaks on X liking Shiloh more. I don't think he said it during the deliberation though. He speaks on his vibe with Aisha that we didn't get to see, and that is taking us by surprise because we never saw that coming. Cornelia speaks on Camille's multiple engagements. Tommy had to step in and say to this man, you keep avoiding the red flags. Why you keep doing it, we have no idea. And he's there looking stupid because it's like he knows he looks stupid right now. And I don't know what to say. All I could say about Cornelius is I'm sick of seeing his face. His face annoys me. He's not exciting to watch. He's predictable. The whole vibe with him and Camille is just very predictable at this point. I don't think none of us care to see them on the TV because it's just too predictable. We want to be in suspense. We want to have the ability to, or the luxury to guess. We don't want to know what the situation is now. There's more episodes to go. There's no There's no real genuine interest in them, Anyway, so Dante, Frank are not feeling Tissia. Walter is saying Phil can't put Camille in the bottom like a big idiot. So they switched and they said Sabrina, who is his number one. So instead of Walter deciding to mind his business, he felt the need to speak on Cornelius's behalf and tell the men, oh, don't make Camille your bottom just so we can keep her for Cornelius. That makes no sense, and that really pissed me the hell off. Like, Walter, worry about your damn self. What Cornelius has going on has nothing to do with you. Let him speak up for Camille. You have no reason to be speaking up for her because her staying doesn't benefit you. So keep your mouth shut and let Cornelius fight his own battles. Cornelius presents himself with such feminine energy that even men feel the need to have to defend him because they feel like he's unable to defend his own self because he very much resides in his feminine power. Like, there's no masculinity at all from Cornelius. Because now they switched up and they're saying Sabrina now. So now, because of your mouth, Sabrina is at the bottom. And Sabrina is supposed to be your strongest connection. So in that moment, Walter looked so stupid to me. If he didn't open his big mouth, Camille would potentially be at the bottom again. It would have been Camille and Tissia, and I feel like Tissia would still go home. But at least Camille would know she's in the bottom, However, Walter opened his mouth. Oh, you guys can't put Camille at the bottom because that's Cornelius' girl. All the while, they switch up to his girl now, Sabrina. Dummy. Anyways, after the elimination, they're gonna go on a trip. Now, this is the trip they go on towards the end of the season when they're coming down to the wire. And this is where we get to see them really interact with each other 24/7. That is how we will see their true personalities when it comes to the interactions with the other women. We're gonna see who the women flock to, who they don't flock to, who they are good friends with, who they are not good friends with. We're going to see the same for the men, but the men tend to be more solid than the women because women see men and they think competition and they think everybody is their competition. So, of course, they're going to be nice, nasty versus men. The men are chilling, So, Phil takes Tissia on the elimination date. He says to her, he's admitted to her that yes, she's been authentic, she's been herself. That's not anything that we could argue because even she's saying, well, if you don't believe me, ask my friends. And I don't think anybody is questioning Tissia's authenticity. It's just that he's not interested in her. And you notice he didn't say, oh, well, me and the men are not interested in you. He said the men. So he put it all on the men. And I also believe he was involved too. He's also not interested in Tissia. But because of the nature of their, I suppose, relationship, he didn't want to, hurt her feelings. So he said the men were not feeling her when in reality he also wasn't. So she ends up going home. Like I told you guys last review, I told you Tissia would be going home. Frank takes Sabrina to some type of outside place. I don't know. Sabrina knows that their connection is not that strong because she's been reaching out to him and he's not really been replying back to her. So she knows all what she needs to know as far as Frank is concerned. She knows Frank and her is not where it's at. Frank is trying to lie and pussyfoot and say, oh, whatever, I have responded to you. And she's saying, but you respond to me after I reach out to you. You don't do it from your free will. And that just speaks to what we've all been saying. The women pursue the men more than the men pursue the women. It's very clear that Frank and Sabrina's relationship is not all that. He's not that interested in her. I don't think she's that interested in him either. She's saying, just tell me the truth. Don't blow smoke up my what you need to tell me. Don't like flood me with nice things and say nice things about me when you're only lifting me up to pull me down. Tell me what you need to tell me, and I agree. And of course, anybody in that situation would be defensive. If they think that they're on an elimination date, I wouldn't be hugging and kissing you, because I will be defensive, because I know this is a date to send me home potentially. So people are talking about, oh, Sabrina only became nice after she learned she was not going to be eliminated. That's with anybody. Anybody will be defensive. I feel like people should really cut Sabrina some slack, because if they were in the same situation, they would be reacting in the exact same way, period. Now, not to say that she's not standoffish, because that's generally the vibe that I get from Sabrina, to be honest. I said both women know it's elimination time, and I think that's why a lot of their personalities seemed a bit off in these particular dates. Sabrina has been pursuing and is not willing to force anything, and I have to agree with that. You shouldn't be forcing anything. So let's go quickly. Next episode, Mumen is having doubts about Walter. He's a different person around Sabrina. That should tell you all what you need to know, Mumen. Dante and Aisha get closer, something we didn't see coming. They're massaging each other, getting very cozy. Aisha and Zadia get into it. We're gonna see why. We know that Zadia was saying that Aisha was haterish. We're gonna see how that unfolds. Let me know what you guys think. This is gonna be a particularly long review. Bear with me. Stay tuned for other reviews from me in the Ranting Shop. Bye. Remember to like and subscribe. See you next time, you guys. Let me know what you think.